Okay, thank you for that kind introduction. And good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the final session on the agenda for the STEM Connector Annual Summit. It's my pleasure to be here and discuss a few thoughts with you regarding the power of digital and how it can play a transformative role in society. We live in very interesting times, and even before COVID pandemic hit us, I think the kind of inequalities that we saw in the world around us was very high, especially as it relates to basic healthcare, access to education, access to meaningful opportunities, so that people can move from one level of society to another. We were facing a lot of challenges. And what COVID has done is exacerbated those challenges and shown the light even more on issues like the underlying issues behind those inequities, like racial inequity, the social justice challenges, and economic opportunity, and the lack of growth, the lack of equitable access to opportunity and prosperity, to name a few. And over the course of the last couple of days, you've learned a lot in this space, you've heard from thought leaders. And what I would like to do is to bring to you some thoughts from the perspective of TCS and my experience. Let me start off with talking about why purpose is the new tech. Every company for the past decade or so has said that they wanted to be a technology company. And with good reason. Technology has been driving growth for organizations, for consumers, for markets, and for communities for long periods of time in the past 20, 30 years. But especially in the past 5 to 10 years, the proliferation of technology and the ability for people to access that technology has become much easier. And today, every company wants to be a purpose company, a purpose driven company. And the reason for that is there is a rising social consciousness around us. Young people, especially, want to participate in action, not just in voicing their opinion. And they view a digital opportunity as equal as an in person opportunity. And that is changing the way in which we are thinking about societal change and the role that people can play in that. The second is that the adoption of technology into everyday life has become so ubiquitous that there are AIs and machine learning algorithms at work all throughout the day to help us shop, to help us work, to help us live our lives, and it has become a part of our life. And the ease of adoption, and therefore the opportunity to use that digital for social change is increased multifold. And finally, I think the long term sustainability of organizations, especially if you look at a post COVID kind of an environment, it is so important that people and organizations integrate purpose into what you do. Therefore, purpose is the new tech, and it is going to be a wonderful era of purpose going forward. But in thinking about the future, we need to look at what are the challenges that we can overcome. And with that, I want to bring a few thoughts to you from TCS's own perspective. As an organization that is $22 billion in revenue, over $100 billion in market cap, we are present in 50 different countries around the world, and almost 450,000 employees. We do have a responsibility in terms of what we do for our customers, what we do for our employees, and what we do for our communities. And our vision is to really empower people in communities and do that in a way where we are connecting them to opportunities in the digital economy. Many of the inequities that exist today can be solved if people can find meaningful opportunities, and we can democratize the prosperity that exists. And connecting people to opportunities in the digital economy can help solve that. But we need to focus on those who are most vulnerable, including women, youth, and marginalized groups. We all know the travesties that we are enduring as a nation, as a society, because of the prevailing racial and social injustice. And therefore, it is important to focus on those who are most vulnerable, those who need the most, and create equitable and inclusive pathways so that it's not a one size fits all, but a custom made solution that can help each of these groups. and approaching these from the lens of equity, inclusion, responsibility, and sustainability. This is the blueprint based on which TCS is doing its work. And I'm fortunate to be at the helm as the Chief Social Responsibility Officer to bring the best of what TCS has to offer in terms of our intellectual capital, our technology capital, our human capital, which we have in abundance, and financial capital. And we apply that against these strategic areas and these stakeholders to create social change. And education, which can be a gateway to opportunity, skilling, which can open up doors for specific jobs and careers in the digital economy, employment, not just stopping and providing those skills, but making meaningful connections between those who have skills and those who have jobs, so that we are making that final step. Entrepreneurship, and in today's world, the especially in rural communities, especially in non-coastal communities, as the large businesses have migrated and been automated, I think the opportunity for small businesses and entrepreneurship to grow is huge, especially young entrepreneurs, women who are entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs from minorities, and this is our focus through our programs. We have reached over 30 million lives in the past 10 years and applied more than $350 million in capital in the last 5 years in our societal investments across a variety of strategic programs, and bringing the best of what TCS has to offer. But let us come to the moment that hit all of us since December and became, especially an international pandemic, a global pandemic in March. When COVID really affected all of us, of course, as an organization, our first priority was to make sure that all of our employees were safe and their health and well being was taken care of. Immediately following that, working with our customers, who in many cases are large banks and financial institutions, pharmaceutical companies, healthcare companies, government agencies, to make sure that critical infrastructure that is supporting the needs of citizens around the world is not disrupted. And once we were able to address these two in a very quick fashion, in fact, we moved 95% of our workforce into a remote operating model in the month of March, early April timeframe. And that continues to this day. Once we did that, it was important to gauge what kind of reaction we should have as a company and as a group of organizations in support of COVID. And the call to action came from our group chairman, Mr. Chandrasekharan, who is the chairman of the Tata Group of Companies, and Mr. Ratan Tata, who is the head of our or the managing director of Tata Trust, which is one of the largest philanthropic organizations in the world. And together, we have put together a $200 million commitment towards a multi-prong approach, addressing basic needs like equipment, like hospitals, and providing access to healthcare. But beyond that, having a large and widespread impact in terms of creating awareness and capacity, so that people can be safe and institutions can increase their throughput and increase their efficiency in how to deal with COVID. TCS is a big supporter of this commitment and has spent millions of dollars in procuring equipment, setting up infrastructure, creating hospitals and isolation centers in India and other parts of the world. We also opened up our research and innovation capabilities to address the crisis head on. And the four areas that we looked at is how do we create support systems for access to health and wellness, how to immediately look at the next big issue, which was the digital divide causing a lack of access to education and quality education opportunities for educators as well as students. And parents were all of a sudden put in homes with their children not having opportunities available to them, turnkey opportunities available to them to engage their children. And these are things that we addressed head on. Then it was looking at all of our capabilities across our portfolio of business units and technology research areas, and looking at how we can harness the potential of those innovations, those ideas, things that maybe we may be offering to customers today. How could we turn that around and offer that to countries, to states, to non-governmental organizations and non-profits? And that was the third focus. And the final one was galvanizing our employee base. Of course, all of us individually and as families are feeling the brunt of this crisis. Many of us have lost loved ones, and we have tremendous respect for what the healthcare workers and the frontline workers are doing to help during this time. But what can we do in addition to that to support that? These are the areas that we focused on, and I want to share a few examples. That in March, when the entire education system in the US turned online overnight, educators as well as students were grappling with how to address this. How do they go about their daily lives? And coming back from spring break, it was evident that the lesson plans and the manner in which education is being conducted today is not easy to move into that model. So our flagship programs like Goit and Ignite My Future have impacted hundreds of thousands of people across 100 cities and 175 school districts across the country. And what we did during this time is to shift the model and create turnkey opportunities with educators and students and parents, firstly for Goit. We made all of our offerings virtual so that whatever was going on and students and the organizations we are engaging with, we were able to continue engaging in that virtual model. We use those networks to share information so that there is more awareness about what is going on, authentic information, so that from a trusted source. And then with Goit at home, we templatize this model of what students can do in their daily time to engage in project-based work. And with that, we were also able to offer parents a follow-along guide that these are steps that you can do along with your children and help them prepare and create projects which are focused on digital. And it turned out to be a big success. Over 1,000 students used this in the first few weeks itself, and we are continuing to leverage and increase that. Today, hundreds of thousands of students are using this in the US and around the world as we expand access to these resources to countries around the world. The second example I want to highlight is from our flagship program, Ignite My Future in School, where this is a highly successful program that's been running since 2017 and introducing the concepts of computational thinking, which is the fundamental skill for the 21st century, into curriculum across all core subjects, whether it is math or science or arts, or humanities, English language, physical education. Can we teach young people skills of the future in the way they will be using it, right? Which is interdisciplinary in nature. And this highly successful program saw a huge uptick during this time frame. Our portal, which has access to all of these resources free of cost, was over used, and we saw almost 1,000 educators reach out and take on the lesson plans across these variety of areas inside computational thinking. And the kind of responses that came, the kind of stories that came out of it was tremendous. We even have educators who banded together and said, okay, my colleagues are facing similar challenges, so let us all come together and have shared lesson plans that we can work together on, and the experiences that we are having we can share with others so that there is a better adoption, there is better student engagement, and we are more effective. So this reached about 60,000 students during that March April time frame, and which has been a truly rewarding experience to see how the strength of and resilience of our education system can be supported through efforts like that. The last point on education I want to mention is that many of the educators as well as parents faced a lot of challenges transitioning into the online mode of and the remote mode of education. Today we are talking about 6 months down the line where still school systems are grappling with this and trying to see how to address parental queries, educator queries, student queries, and coming to a place where they are better able to handle it. Imagine it in March, April timeframe And we have offerings in house that we take to customers, and a team put this together, a solution called Educational Virtual Assist. It's called EVA. And what this tool does is gives access to educators and parents to call a hotline and be connected with the professional from TCS who would help them navigate through the challenges that they are facing so that the last mile doesn't become a problem, and the resources that are available, educators are able to use it, parents are able to make sure that their children are able to access it. And this has been another innovation that was timely as well as necessary. The generosity of our employees also made sure that we tap into other areas that are of need. We reached out to states across the country and offered all of the state governors and their education departments access to these resources. We also offered access to pro bono services, where TCS as a technology provider, we have experience in the unemployment claims domain, and we offered this free of cost again to people and states across the country. And we had several states respond to it, and some of them we are working with even now. But one thing that our employees said is, how can I count? I know that people around me, many of them have lost their jobs, they don't have access to income, and they are relying on unemployment benefits. How can I help them? And we had a mobilization of volunteers from across the US, and what they did is they worked with the New York state, what is known as a SWAT team, a technology team that is put together by the state. And they ended up working long hours during a 2 week, 3 week time period, and made sure that claims were being processed so that the capacity of the state agencies was increased during this time. And we estimate that during just a 3 day period, we were able to process over 140,000 claims, making sure that those families knew where their next paycheck is coming from. They had access to some money and some income so that they can support themselves during this crisis. Finally, I also wanted to mention this example of what is happening in India with our social innovation startup ecosystem. DISQ, or DISC as it is known, is a digital innovation square that we created in one of the towns in India to bring the social innovation community together. Organizations, entrepreneurs, startups, and coming together to solve societal problems. And during this time, one of the startups that was incubated within our TCS DISC started working on issues around access to health assessments. Our experts in DISC also worked on mobility challenges that people were facing during this time, and also created geofencing and other protocol based applications that were then adopted by the government as part of keeping people safe and helping with contact tracing and other issues. Last but not the least, the generosity of our employees also made sure that through a matching campaign, we were able to double the donations that our employees put up, which was close to $1 million, and TCS was able to match that. And all of this money went to charitable causes to local organizations like Feeding America, which was supporting food security during the crisis. The Canadian Red Cross, which is supporting elders, and the rising suicide rates that were happening during this time, and providing relief to those individuals who are impacted by that. So, in conclusion, what I wanted to share is that any organization can transform based on what is happening in the external environment. And leaders are the ones who really drive that change. And today, we are at a crossroads in society where the organizations are being asked to do more than talk, do more than act, be active champions, be catalysts of change in society. And with the theme of purpose is the new tech, this is what TCS is doing. This is what we are doing to address that need. I think it is a time for leadership. I think it is a time for action. And all of you who are listening are agents of change. I welcome all of you to join hands with us, with STEM Connector and other partners in these efforts and make sure that we are working towards a more equitable future. Thank you all. It is a pleasure talking to you and have a good rest of the day.